welcome to the resumption of 5-5 Sports. I'm your host, Evan Rudenberg, and today we got Matthew Choi alongside me, as well as a special guest, my good friend and soccer expert, Darya Amirshahi. Thank you so much for coming back.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about everything that's coming up because there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff coming up.
We're good friends. You know what? He knows the sports, but unfortunately, he is a Manchester United fan as well as a New England Patriots fan. I could, accept the United, but the Patriots, I don't know. But, we stuck through all these years. Anyways, we have a lot to get to today, starting with the resumption of the NHL. They're going to be in Toronto, so maybe, they have the Maple Leafs have some familiarity with the city, but will their playoff demons come back this year against the Columbus Blue Jackets? The series starts on Sunday, and let me start by asking you, Matthew, how do you think that series is going to go?
I say Leafs will win in 4 games because it's a best 3-5 series. I think Columbus will take 1 game, but I think it's Leafs to win because we all know about the curse about Leafs and their playoffs history, but Columbus Blue Jackets simply are not the Boston Bruins. And Leafs are a talented team. Leafs are a too talented team to lose to Columbus. Give or take a game based on our prediction, I think it's Leafs series to win.
Now, I agree with what you're saying. The talent level for the Leafs, I think, is higher offensively, but here's what scares me. And it's what scares me every year about the Leafs going into the playoffs. It's the fact that their defense has proven year after year that they're not good enough. And they don't have the number one guy like Columbus does and Seth Jones. They both have goalies that, could get hot, and NHL playoff series often rely on the fact that you have a hot goalie. You're not going to win a series, let alone an NHL championship, without a hot goalie. I don't know if you would agree with me on that.
I completely agree on that.
To me, Morgan Riley's number 2 guy. He's not that shutdown guy like, Seth Jones on Columbus or even other guys around the league that have proven that they win on Stanley Cup teams. Pittsburgh, you have a guy like Chris Letang. And unfortunately for Morgan Riley, even though he has elevated his game to another level over the last few years since Babcock and now continue that with Sheldon Keefe, he's developed very nicely. But he's not that shutdown guy in the playoffs that you see on Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think Leafs, the weakest – I mean, it's no surprise to say, the weakest point of the Leafs are their defense. And that would probably be – if the Columbus does win the series, that would be probably the main cause of it. I mean, of course, this is expecting that players like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, they put up the numbers that we expect them to. That's, again, another if, though, because Marner, he hasn't been that far from his best season this year. Same with Tavares, so that also comes into question. But the way I see it, does Columbus have enough offensive talent to outscore Leafs?
Good question. I think you've made that point, but I think this series against Columbus is going to tell us a lot about the Maple Leafs. I think one is going to tell us a lot about Sheldon Keefe. I think we're going to learn a lot about him in this 5 games. And, it may not be fair to judge these guys because of how unusual the circumstances is. Because of COVID-19, they haven't played competitively in, what's it been, 4 or 5 months? I've, kind of lost track within the last, little while of the days have gone by kind of slowly. But, not having that game fitness and that kind of intensity right away, and you're jumping into the playoffs. So despite them, starting preseason against Montreal tonight, the quick turnaround is very hard to kind of predict it, and I think we're going to see a lot of upsets and a lot of unexpected results. But I think we're going to learn a lot about, kind of the mindset of some of the players and kind of some of the teams, because to be able to go and push on having this kind of this delay and these unusual circumstances, being able to go on a run, I think we're going to learn a lot about a lot of teams' mentalities and a lot of players. That said about the Leafs, I think we're not only going to learn a lot about Sheldon Keefe, we're going to learn a lot about how together this team is. And
since you mentioned Keefe, I have to ask you, as a Leaf fan, would you consider this season a fair assessment of Keefe's ability to coach the team?
I think he'll get 1 more year, no matter what, because there has been offensive improvement. Slightly, they are number 1 in goals, and I think defensively, he's done, I'd say, just as good or just as bad as Babcock. But I think we will learn a lot about Sheldon Keefe and his experience and his ability. Sorry, not his experience, his ability to coach in the playoffs. And as we know, in any sport, the playoffs are a different animal than the regular season. So my heart says the Leafs will win the series in 5 just because of the offensive talent level they have and the fact that maybe Columbus's, togetherness and Columbus is a very, defensively sound team, and not being on the ice in a competitive game for a while may actually just give advantage to the scorers in this NHL restart, simply because they may have more tricks up their sleeves, and defensively teams aren't going to be as organized.
As a Leafs fan, if this was the year that Leafs do win the cup, would the fact that there's a big if. A big if.
Big if. What? Okay.
But if that was the case,
hypothetically,
how would you feel about it being the year that we had this whole delay and COVID? Would it matter to you if they won?
No, what it matter to me is, it's like people are saying, would you put an asterisk on the rat? Like, you know what? I don't care that Durant and Klay Thompson got injured, because frankly, I don't know if it would have mattered. A, and two, injuries happen. You saw it happen in Cleveland when Golden State played Cleveland, and Love and Kyrie it's part of the game. And it's not like the Raptors had an easy playoff run. Orlando is probably the toughest team out of the bottom 4. Philadelphia, good team, good series. The only reason they won was because of a freak bounce in Kawhi Leonard. So you can't tell me they didn't earn every single bucket and every single sweat and tear they put into that series. And then Milwaukee again was another grind. You had the best team in the East. They set numerous records, one of the best regular season teams of all time. They had a young superstar in Giannis who's only gotten better this year, but that was a very good team last year, and no one could take away the fact that they defeated the 3-time champion in the Golden State Warriors. To me, if the Leafs win, if the Leafs win, I wouldn't care, because you know what, it would be a championship, and you still got to earn every single thing that they're about to play for.
I completely agree. Whoever wins this deserves, because everyone that has the chance to win at this point.
It's a little different in the NBA, as you mentioned. Kind of everyone has a chance because of the playoffs. The play in the series, you're gonna have teams like Portland, New Orleans, Memphis. Memphis is in the playoffs right now. We're gonna have teams that you didn't know if they were going to make it to they have a 1 in 4 chance, and that's what the NBA is kind of giving them. And speaking about the NBA, let's talk a little bit about the Raptors. And I want to start with asking you is, who has the best chance of overtaking Milwaukee? Because I think we can all admit that they're the favorites. So I think the top 3 are Philadelphia, the Celtics, and the Raptors. So out of those 3, or, pick an outside source, but out of those teams, who do you think has the best chance of upsetting the Milwaukee Bucks?
In my opinion, it's easily the Raptors. I just don't see Boston having the capability to shut down Giannis. They are a good team, well-coached team. I don't think they have the talent to shut down a player like Giannis defensively. I think Raptors do have that ability. I think the Sixers have that ability, but Sixers are not the most best coached team of those teams. Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the league at the moment. He has done an incredible job with the Raptors this season. The Raptors have been a force to be reckoned with defensively, and I think they easily have the best shot.
Yeah, I would agree. The Raptors are definitely up there, and there's tons of teams. Like I was even thinking about before all of this obviously happened. Obviously the Heat were something that were interesting. I always like the Pacers. Not saying that even the records say something, but to me they have. It would be interesting to see what can happen now, because the momentum for all these teams has kind of would have died down after being 3 months ago. So I'm interested to see how these teams kind of approach these games without fans and all that. But yeah, it should be interesting. I do think the Raptors have definitely a good chance. They've definitely impressed me for sure this season with Kawhi gone, and it would be very interesting to see if they can actually overtake the Bucks and have that opportunity in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I fully agree that even though I may be slightly biased, I do think it's Toronto for one simple reason. I think they have a coaching advantage, and it's quite obvious they have a coaching advantage. At least for Philadelphia, Brett Brown, I don't think is on the level of Nick Nurse or Brad Stevens. I think Nick Nurse gets the nod over Brad Stevens simply because he's won an NBA championship, and that may not be fair on Brad Stevens because he hasn't had that superstar like Kawhi Leonard, Boston has, an emerging superstar in Jason Tatum. Kemba Walker, I think, is an all-star, maybe not a superstar. Kind of, he's on that fringe, but I think he's slightly more, you'd lean to categorizing him as an all-star and a very good player over a superstar. So, Jaylen Brown's also emerging as, an all-star, maybe a potential superstar. So they have a very good team, but they haven't had the talent level that Nick Nurse has. So I think Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens are fairly even when you talk about coaching, but the fact that Nick Nurse did win an NBA championship and he did it in style and in the way he did, I give him that slight advantage over, Boston. But I just think Giannis, it's a superstars league and he's hungry, and they still have a great team in Milwaukee. Don't get me wrong. Even without, even if they took off Giannis, it wouldn't be as good, but their team with Giannis is very good and they understand each other. They play very well. And I'd love to believe Toronto can, upset them, but I think Toronto would have to, again, grind against a Boston and maybe an Orlando. And then if they end up playing Milwaukee, I think they just may run out of gas, and Milwaukee will be the fresher of the two teams and the slightly better. So for those reasons alone, they've had their rest. There's no fans. There's no distractions. Milwaukee, I give the advantage this year.
Especially since no one, as great as Raptors are, no one on Raptors can dominate a game the way Giannis can.
Exactly. Kawhi, stopped him, before he got into the half court. And then if he got past Kawhi, he'd run into the wall, which was Ibaka and Gasol, and you have Siakam. Just not having Kawhi it will impact the team. It will. And they'll still be very good. They showed this year, every game they play, they don't get blown out. They play to the final, whistle. And they're good. They proved that they are a very good, strong team this year. Once again, they're in second in the East. And I think if they end up playing Milwaukee, which I do believe they will, I think they'll give them an excellent fight. But I just think this year Milwaukee has that edge because of Giannis. And losing Kawhi will hurt them a lot because Giannis will only be better. He's gone better, and now he's hungrier too.
You mentioned Giannis, you mentioned Milwaukee. Who do you have coming out of the West?
You know what? I thought a lot about this. And despite popular opinion, I don't think it's going to be the Clippers, and I don't think it's going to be the Lakers. For some reason, there's something about the Lakers that bug me, and I don't know what it is. And there's something about, and to me, the Clippers, it matters that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard haven't played with each other a lot, and chemistry matters a lot in the NBA. We all know that. And, LeBron's a terrific player, top 2 of all time. There's no disputing it. If you want to have a different opinion, then I don't think you should be talking about basketball. You can, debate Jordan and James all you want, but the fact is they are 1 and 2. But to me, the fact that there's so much, commotion around the Lakers and so much media attention, now they added J.R. Smith and now they added Deion. There's so much going on with the Lakers team. And with the Clippers, but I'll get into that. We can talk about Lou Williams in, just a moment. But I think the Lakers have had so much change up, and they have Davis and LeBron. But when Davis comes out, you have guys like JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. And it's just, to me, it's so much commotion on the Lakers. You don't know who's playing, and you don't know who the best 5 is. And you have Caruso. There's so much. I could go on, and I could talk about all these different scenarios with the Lakers. But for some reason, I just feel there's so much commotion and so much drama around them that someone's going to surprise them in the first or second round, and someone's going to knock them out.
You think Lakers will be out in the first or second round?
I think the second round. Wow. I think someone's going to somehow beat them in the second round.
Here's the thing. I understand what you mean by the commotion of the team and everything going on around it. But I feel like that is massively, and I mean massively, undermining LeBron and Anthony Davis and how talented they are and how much these 2 players can carry the team. I mean, in the bubble right now, they are probably, both of them are the top 5 players right now. I think saying that all this commotion will distract them from the goal to win championship is massively undermining them and their ability.
I would say with the Clippers as well, I find that interesting that you think they're going to crash out as well, because that they do have as you mentioned before, Kawhi Leonard, and I do wonder if this season for them was something. I mean, we all know the type of team they are, and seeing them in second and the way they've been playing, it would be very shocking to see them go out so early, I would feel. I don't know. What were you thinking on that?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not saying I'm right, but for some reason I just have a gut feeling. To me, the Clippers haven't played enough with each other, and then again they have the drama. Lou Williams, doing you know, I'm not gonna say what he's doing, but just causing a distraction basically.
Mhm.
Leaving the bubble. If there was a appropriate reason for you to do that, then by all means. I don't need to know about your personal life, but to be going to some adult it doesn't make sense in this time if you're focused on the championship and you're focused on winning. Even Perkins said the Wings are good, but at this moment of time, and then with the sensitivity of the matter going on with COVID-19, it's just such a brain dead move for him to do that. And again, they've just had some distractions, and to me as well, they haven't played enough with each other, Kawhi and Paul George, to actually win a championship, to kind of come together in crunch time and just have that understanding between each other. They could easily, because they are a hell of a team with a lot of talent, but for some reason, I could see a team like Denver. I think Denver is my pick to actually go on and advance the finals, despite having, again, they would have a tough run, and they would end up having Houston in the first round, and then either a Clippers or we don't know. But I think Denver, for some reason, maybe it's the Bol Bol effect, but something about their team chemistry, their togetherness, and I think they have a superstar in Jokic and an excellent player in Jamal Murray, and other players like Will Barton and Gary Harris. Something about their depth, and I think that's what's going to help them a lot. If they end up playing a team like the LA Clippers in the playoffs. Call me crazy, but it's just a gut feeling.
I will say this: I will not count out Denver. I think people are often do count them out because they say, "Oh, it's going to definitely be our Lakers or Clippers." Denver does have an equal chance amongst both of them.
I would also argue that possibly the Jazz. I've
The
always liked
Jazz.
I've been liking the way they've been playing this season, especially with Donovan Mitchell. I really like him, and I do think I don't know if they're obviously as balanced as the Nuggets, because that was actually my pick as well.
Really,
But yeah,
great minds think alike. Then
yeah,
Denver.
yeah. I do really like both those teams, to be honest with you. That's the thing about the West that's so exciting, because there's so many of those teams like Utah and Denver and even a team like Houston below. There are a lot of strong teams in the West, which makes it really exciting to see how it goes. So, yeah.
Let's talk about the NFL. And it has had a crazy offseason, but the craziest moments, I think, have come in the last week. Even more specifically in the last 48 hours, with a lot of players opting out. So I will start with the Patriots fan. You've had 6 players opt out. How are you feeling, or kind of what is your kind of impression on why this is happening?
Oh, 6 players as of right now. There could be more as we're doing the podcast, but
Yeah, have Schefter's tweets on your notifications that you let me know. But
it's weird because this is all kind of happening so fast. And I remember a few days ago, I'd seen some reports about the NFLPA of the Players Association that there was a lot of concerns about starting the season. And I know that it hasn't calmed down. They were supposed to be fine, but you can kind of understand where everyone's mindset is. And I'm not just talking about Patriot players. I'm talking about the entire NFL, or some players in, like, I believe some Chicago players and Bills players. I can understand there's a concern of the safety's not being put to as the primary thing right now. And in terms of the Patriots, it's a shame, because right now, like Hightower, for example, being one of our big, and Chung, for example, being our big assets already looking to be opting out, it's already in a season where the Patriots are having to go through so much transition. And for me, it makes me nervous about, if the season continues, how many more players will be gone by the end of it, or by the start of it, I should say, actually.
I fully agree with you. Here's the one thing I'd say. I don't think the NFL cares unless you start having quarterbacks, running backs, or receivers start opting out. Is especially if you have big names, of course. The biggest names, the guys like Mahomes, Lamar, Rodgers, Brady. But I mean, that's yet to be seen, and I don't think you're going to have guys like that make any big decisions anytime soon, because the NFL is a pretty tight-knit community, and kind of the stars, don't make any rash decisions, before consulting each other. So you see that togetherness a lot from the NFL. But what I would say, and we've seen with the MLB kind of starting early, how their situation is going down, and I think the NFL is in the similar situation as the MLB, in the fact is you have a lot of people in close-knit communities, or in like close-knit groups, and you're traveling. The reason why it feels like the NBA and NHL are working, because you have smaller teams, smaller groups of people, and they're in a bubble. I just think there's more people involved in the NFL, and again, I think that we're going to see more people drop out, because it's just a lot less likely that they're going to have a plan that will benefit all the players, and all the players can agree on something.
I agree with that. It seems like, I mean, you guys said it all. Like, we've seen what's happened to MLB and how hard it is to contain this. If moment that starts hitting, especially since the NFL, like, it's a business and they want to make money. And once this starts affecting the marketable players, like you said, Mahomes, Lamar, Rodgers, they aren't going to continue with that.
We've seen what top NFL players have said about, the NFL's plan. They don't think it's good enough. And in a situation that's as serious as this, the NBA and the NHL have done it perfectly. They really have. Contain everyone, put them in a bubble, and
the last test, NHL had no cases.
Exactly.
So,
everyone's in a hotel. You're by yourself. You interact with people. You wear a mask, and if you don't have it, you don't have it, and just don't interact with other people. Let's move on. The baseball season has started, so we will talk a little bit about the Blue Jays. How would you assess their start? I know it's early, and there's a lot of baseball games, but the 60-game season, stuff's going to move pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I gotta say, I've been very impressed so far. I'm not. I know the record only says something in terms, like, it's, I believe as of right now it's 2-2.
Yeah.
But I have to say there seems to be a better atmosphere already. Which is something it's something new that I haven't really seen in quite a little bit with these young stars like
So
Bichette.
when you say atmosphere, you mean kind of just like the feeling from Blue Jays fans?
Oh no, I would talk more
atmosphere?
in terms of the clubhouse, in terms of the people there, in terms of players there.
Like, yeah. kind of like the feeling they're giving off, kind of just like the belief.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. When
Exactly.
we say atmosphere, I'm thinking like fans. Wait, no.
Yeah.
Not baseball, but anyways.
No, but Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette, Vlad, I've been very impressed. They've started relatively decent, and the lineup there's still some work obviously needed there, but and especially when it comes to pitching. But I have to say, I'm quite optimistic about their possible ambitions this year, especially with it being a 60-game season, and more potential for playoffs, or at least playoff spots, I should say. But yeah, no, they've been impressive to me so far. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen some growing pains in the two losses to Tampa Bay. The game on Sunday where it went to extra innings, I think. The game, of course, Ken Giles wasn't 100%, but I think the game also ends if Vladimir Guerrero doesn't make the mistake. They're in the shift. He should know that, but he's young, and you can't judge them on how they do this season, because obviously the pitching isn't great. They have again Ryu, who's going to improve the pitching, but he's kind of the only really consistent guy that you're going to rely on.
I completely agree with you. It should be very interesting to see where this goes. We have to enjoy as much baseball as we can, with the threat of it possibly canceling, obviously. But if it does go ahead, I am very excited to see what this Blue Jays team can do. And I would say there's a lot to look forward for Blue Jays fans. There's a few pieces missing, but you know what? There is a lot to look forward to. And if it's not this season, then it'll be the next that we will start to see the real change and the real potential be put into place. And we can see it in action, I should say.
We keep it going. We brought Darya on mainly because of his footy expertise. The Premier League has just concluded its season, and it's a league we follow very tightly. I would say, and both our teams, Chelsea United, ended up with a Champions League spot. But let's start with the champions, Liverpool. What do you make of their season? Where's it rank in history?
Oh God! Well, you're asking me some tough questions because talking about Liverpool in the bright spot like that is a little bit tough. But I will say, obviously as being one of our greatest rivals, they have been the better team this season. It's simply they've been the better team. The league the standards has not the greatest this season. In terms of the stature of teams like City competing with them, and United and Chelsea and Arsenal and Tottenham. Like, it was a very poor tier standard, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that they've had an outstanding season domestically. There was a potential of them going undefeated until they versed Watford back in January.
Imagine that, relegated Watford, yeah. But
oh man, it's crazy. I mean, I'm thankful, of course, that they did it, but yeah, it's something that, like, I feel like Liverpool definitely were an impressive team. They played some very good football, and they have some outstanding players that I feel like are improving every season. It's just a matter, I guess, if they can hold on to it next. Yeah.
Yeah. I would just say about Liverpool very quickly. They're worthy champions, and they played. At times, wasn't the prettiest of football, but they played football that wins you titles. As Sir Alex said, offense wins you games, but defense wins you championships, and they win you trophies. And what happened is Van Dijk and Alisson, I think Ramos is the best center back just because of the impact Ramos has had, and I think he's still a top player. Not many people can do what he does, but I think Van Dijk is the second best center back in the world because of how consistent he is. And when he makes a mistake, or when he has a slightly bad performance, it's magnified, and everything he does is very under the spotlight. And so often this year, until kind of it all derailed after Watford and Atletico, they struggled a bit after the coronavirus break, but consistency happens. But what they'd be able to, even what they did last year, just missing out to, again, one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. What a race it was last year. What do you make about Spurs turnaround since they fired Pochettino?
I remember the day he was fired, and I remember a bunch of United fans on Twitter and everywhere really saying, you are going to get Mourinho, and you don't know what you're getting from him because he is not the manager he used to be. And I have to be honest, simply Tottenham were not good enough this season. I feel like there was so much potential after that Champions League final last season. And I do think they have, especially offensively with Heung-min Son and Harry Kane and just the general talent there, it is there. I just felt tactically they seem to be Mourinho's tactics just simply didn't really work with Tottenham. I don't know. I guess they're very underwhelming.
I would slightly disagree with you that they're underwhelming because they did finish 6th and they were unbeaten. I think, were they unbeaten since the restart? Maybe they lost once, but I can't.
Yes.
But I think overall the job Mourinho done is he hasn't had the talent level, and he hasn't had the same kind of core that Pochettino had. He had Vertonghen. He had Prime Lloris. I'm just drawing a blank on Vertonghen's partner, Alderweireld. I'm sorry, and Harry Kane. He's still being that same player, and Heung-min Son's only gotten better. But I think just Dele Alli under Pochettino is a different player. He had that threat when they had their really good days in their Champions League run. Christian Eriksen, of course, world-class player on his day, and Mourinho's really only had Harry Kane and Son. Of course, Mourinho has had a checkered past with United. He's won it with Chelsea, but again, had some checkered past with Chelsea. He had some pretty bad and dark days while coaching that club. So, of course, Mourinho, I think the consistency is always a question. Can he do it after the first year? But the job he did to bring them the Europa League was a fairly good job because he really didn't lose. And, I think it was a weaker side than other years.
Yeah, I do agree with you in some aspects, especially like you do have to give the benefit of the doubt, especially for Mourinho. He didn't have this like in terms of squad, it wasn't built to the liking that Pochettino especially wanted. That's to do with their board, of course. They didn't spend as much money as they wanted to on the players they wanted. So yeah, I can understand that. Obviously, Mourinho needs to be given time. You can argue that was one of the issues at United that he didn't have that time, although I would obviously differ. I know a bunch of fans that would differ on that. With the thing is, though, what it comes down to, and we kind of touched upon with Liverpool, was the fact that Liverpool didn't always play well, but they still got the
Yes,
wins.
they,
And
they they won dirty, or sorry, not like dirty, but they got their hands dirty to win some games. They won a lot of games 1-0, 2-1, 2-0. They weren't always the highest scoring team this year. I mean, of course, they did blow some teams away, but it wasn't every game. They were very compact at the back. They didn't let in many goals, and Liverpool just found ways to win. And
but what my thing was is that with Tottenham, there was this general, like, especially when
exactly.
I guess just watching them, their style of play just seems so much more with flair, and it was felt a lot different with Pochettino. Whereas Mourinho, it's very compact, very defensive. It gives me flashbacks as a United fan to those days when he was coaching us, and it's unfortunate because I do think he's a good coach. I feel just his tactically his mindset seems he hasn't seemed to adjust himself yet, or adjust himself to the point where he has to realize is sometimes you got to change your style of play. And yes, Tottenham did have a good run at the end of the season, but they still lost some crucial games, a crucial game in particular against Sheffield. And they weren't the most
I mean,
watchable side.
Okay, I would agree with you on that. They weren't the most watchable side, but I mean, we can argue at times. Even this year, City lost 9 times. Despite them finishing second. I think 9 or 10. I forget how many times they lost, but it was an unusual amount from a side managed by Pep Guardiola and a side with the talent level that they have, obviously. But I think the one thing that I give to Mourinho is again, he didn't play the most attractive football, but the reality is the results were there. A coach is allowed to lose the game. If you lose one game to Sheffield, Chelsea also lost to Sheffield. United drew Sheffield 3-3. So in the Premier League, you do drop points. That's the reality of it. So I'm not going to, a few off games for Spurs. I think overall they were very organized. And I think the similarity between Pochettino and Mourinho is they demand a lot from their players.
Very true.
And I think there's enough professionals in that Tottenham side, like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Hugo Lloris. It's a very professional side, and they may not have the trophies to go along with that, but they do have enough good results that you have the expectation for them to do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, we're going to move on to Arsenal. Not a good season for Arsenal. I would say they're worse in at least 25 years. And over the last, 10 years, they've had some pretty bad years. It's always fun to make fun of Arsenal. As a Chelsea fan, it's a lot of fun to make fun of Arsenal. But how do you assess their season and what went wrong? Is it the players? Was it Unai? Again, what happened?
It's really funny because this team was supposed to have, when you look at Arsenal on paper, especially at the start of the season, you see the likes of Aubameyang, you see the likes of Lacazette, you have some young players, especially in the midfield, that over the course of the season really obviously improved. But there was a lot of thinking about where would Arsenal actually finish at the start of the season. And with Emery being sacked and eventually Arteta coming in, there's so much transition and so much of this rebuild phase that seems to have been, if anything, has been overly amplified because of this season, because they simply have not been good enough in all departments. There have been issues. I would say, I obviously, in terms of goalkeeping situations, I would argue that was probably one of their strongest aspects this season. And obviously, Aubameyang with his with a lot of, I believe it was in the top was he top 2 in scoring charts in England
Vardy
or
won.
around there?
Vardy won. I'm pretty sure. Aubameyang and Ings were tied on 22.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely had there were a lot of uncertainties, especially with Ozil and with Aubameyang and Lacazette's future.
Yeah.
It was just and then the summer Guendouzi was with Arteta and Maupay. It was just
Mopai.
it was simply just a mess for them all season.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, I fully agree with you. I remember the Brighton game very well. It feels like kind of that was their lowest when Neil Mapai got a brace over them after injuring Bernd Leno.
Yeah.
I think to me it was a freak accident. There was no dirty, or it wasn't. There was no malicious play about it. It was just one of the things that happened. But I think a lot of Arsenal players have been extremely overrated this year. And I think there's been a lot of inconsistency, and the one thing they lack is character. There's a bunch of egos in that team that think they're a lot better than they are, and they really aren't, and they need a lot of players. And it doesn't appear that's going to come this year because Arsenal's proven to be kind of financially tight, and especially this year, you can't assume it's going to get better. It seems like they have less money to spend, especially not being in Europe. But to me, I think a lot of Arsenal fans have overrated some of their players.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
With that said, the final thing we're going to talk about within the Premier League season is Manchester United and Chelsea. I think they both had different expectations, and their seasons have gone different ways. But at the end, they both finished in Champions League spots. That was the goal for both Ollie and Frank. So let me say, straight out, it's the question all Chelsea and Man United fans debate about. Who, I think we both agree Lampard within the context has had the better season than Ollie.
Yep.
But who would you rate as a better manager? Because we've seen Ollie for I think a longer period at Manchester United than we have at Chelsea.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously with Ole, you have probably a good 6 months more because he was hired back in, oh my goodness, it was December of
2018.
2018. Oh my goodness, yeah. So he had a half season, which obviously didn't end as well as we wanted. But no, it's funny because the thing with the story with Ole is quite strange because there are a lot of people still even now that do not think he's the right man in charge for United. But then I see a huge portion of the fan base that do think that he is going to be something, going to be kind of like Sir Alex vibe with it and carry on. And I'm kind of, I'll be honest, I'm more so in the middle, maybe leaning towards that. Obviously, that's Sir Alex because trying to be hopeful. And that's just because I feel like there's a general difference with the team, not just because of the way they've spent, but recently, but in terms of the type of football they're playing. And especially with Ole, there's a difference against the top sides this season that we haven't had in quite a bit, with having one of the best records against the top 6 teams. And it's quite amazing because it does seem to be a difference in just the style of play and that. And my greatest weakness for Ole so far has been what Van Gaal and Mourinho have struggled as well, where it was breaking down teams that come into Old Trafford or are at home and they're sitting back. But obviously with Bruno Fernandes coming in and with the emergence of Greenwood, there is possibilities of that there was a shown of improvement, especially since the restart, which gets me very optimistic for next season. And just generally where Ole may be taking this team next season.
Mm-hmm. To me, I think, it may be early days, but I'm very excited with what Frank Lampard has been able to do. It's absolutely no one expected him to be in the top 4, just missing out on third place, goal difference, but it's potato at this point. Third and fourth, they both get Champions League. They both have the same thing. But to me, I feel like Lampard's had less to work with. He lost Hazard, who, you can, debate that he's not world class all you want, but to me, he'll always be a world class player, despite, this poor year, with Real Madrid. To me, just his impact and, his talent's undeniable. And just, I think the way, kind of he was a star when Chelsea won, kind of they ran their team through him when they won Premier Leagues, when they won the Europa League, when they won the 2 Europa Leagues. And they've also won FA Cups, and a lot of big reasons behind that was Eden Hazard's impact on the games. But then again, losing that and then not being able to replace him, I guess in the sense of the word, they were able to replace him with Pulisic, but Lampard didn't actually choose any of the players that he got to work with. Pulisic has ended up working out. He looks to be an absolutely phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong, he looks like an absolute star. And that can only be good for Chelsea with the American market and the fact that they paid $60 million for him. So the fact that he looks like he's going to be an absolute world-class player for the years to come is looking just like a great investment. With all that being said, there's no way Chelsea is worse next year because of the talent they have. And as long as they replace Kepa with anyone competent, maybe Onana, maybe Jan Oblak, probably not, maybe Dean Henderson. There's a lot of unknowns. But whoever it is, we know it's not going to be Kepa. We know they're going to get better. And to me, I believe for those reasons, Chelsea is going to finish ahead of United. Because I don't think United is going to get the same decisions that they did last season. Everyone talks about VAR, and I think they've been, people aren't fair to them because they make it seem like VAR is the only reason they did well. But I think they did get a lot of dodgy decisions. I think you'd agree with that. There are a lot of 50-50s that kind of went your way. And the numbers clearly, show that, the record for penalties, the most VAR decisions over. So, I mean, some of them have been the right decisions. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's been about 50-50. Sometimes it's been right, but, other teams have been screwed over by the technology a lot more than United. I think United have benefited a lot more than the other way around.
Yeah, okay. You know what? I will admit, obviously, VAR has its issues, and I will admit that United, more than not this season, have gotten the better end of deals, like in terms of the call going decisions, for them. Yeah. But, obviously, people will not always forget that there are problems with it's not just one team that kind of goes. I understand obviously the penalty decisions. There are a lot of terrible calls, especially since the restart. Funny enough, I noticed that really came to fruition, especially in that game in Aston Villa with Bruno diving, and a lot of that. And it's unfortunate because it kind of
you want everything to be fair. You would love every decision to be the right decision, but unfortunately with Premier League refs, they've proven time and time again that even with the use of technology, there seems to be more controversy with the technology than without, which is just an embarrassment from not only the Premier League officials but also the FA, not knowing their head from their ass. But with that being said, I think United and Chelsea have very good futures. Will I think they'll be as good as City or Liverpool next year? No, because they're just a step behind. Chelsea's not going to be able to fix that defense. Just with a new goalie, it's going to take, I think, at least another center back, maybe to go with Zuma and Tomori. But Christensen and Rudiger clearly aren't, the future of this club if you want to be serious about winning trophies. Obviously, you need a new left back, and you're taking a risk because the market isn't really there yet. If you take a cheap option on Tagliafico or Tellez, maybe they work, maybe they don't. Reece James looks like a very good player, but again, I think if Chelsea are able to drastically improve defense, the midfield's there. You have a world-class player in Conte if he's fit. Kovacic has been nothing short of excellent this year, and then you're going to have two attacking aides that Lampard has experimented with. And Kai Havertz is going to be a lot better than Ross Barkley or Hakeem Ziyech. It's going to be a lot more consistent and a lot just, different than Willian or guys like Pedro.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. I don't know if I agree on the whole if the Chelsea will be better off than next season. I will say this.
Time will tell for sure, but that's my gut feeling. Chelsea fan, probably a little bit biased, of course. Frank Lampard's my screensaver on my phone, so in Frank I trust, but
I will
different feeling around the club, but
I will say that this transfer window is very vital for both clubs. I feel like there are obviously Chelsea have already done some business, but there are stuff to do, and especially as well for United, like you already mentioned with Sancho, and there are players that I feel like United really need to invest on to really see if they can get them in. But to be honest, I do really think that this summer transfer window will be pretty massive for them, especially with the season only starting in September.
Yeah, September. Yeah, quick turnaround, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be interesting to see what both teams can accomplish with the players they have, as well as the players they're going to bring in.
Quickly before we move on to our final topic in the MLS, I'm just going to ask you the FA Cup final. Chelsea looks more primed to be ready, but Arsenal upset City. No one really saw that one coming.
No, nobody did.
Mikel got one over, the mastermind in Pep. So, Chelsea, Arsenal, how do you think that one's going to end up?
Oh, man. Of course, obviously being neutral, like, I guess if I'm honest, I don't want to see the amount of Arsenal fans that will be on my feed talking about the win. So I guess I have to say, but that's more of my want. But if generally thinking, I do think Chelsea have the edge, obviously, in this game. I feel like tactically and as well as in terms of the momentum going into this game, I feel like they have the edge.
And again, Arsenal's proven time and time again that they're just, they on the big occasion they don't step up. For that reason, Chelsea will win the FA Cup on Sunday. Lastly, our last topic of the day. We've been here for a while. I'm so happy you guys stuck around with me, but we have to talk about the MLS. TFC unfortunately lost to New York City FC. They won the group but lost in the round of 16. What are your what are your final thoughts and kind of what went wrong for TFC and how do they improve next year?
I remember even last season when we saw them go to the final of the MLS Cup. There wasn't this hype that there used to be, especially when the days with Giovinco.
I think Altidore and Bradley's aren't the same player, and defensively they're not as good. I think years ago they're more of a unit. If they felt more like Liverpool, they were harder to break down. They just won games ugly, and they made the finals. They lost to Seattle the next year. They got back, beat Seattle, and then lost to Seattle again. They've been the two best teams over the last 5 years consistently, even when they shouldn't have, because teams like LAFC last year. So TFC and Seattle over the last 4 years when they made the finals, there's a year where they both didn't make it, but when they both did make the finals, they always kind of upset a team or two. They were always good, but they were never the favorites. TFC, having to upset teams like New York City FC last year, who were number one, Atlanta United, and Seattle doing the same thing. So I think overall, I think TFC they looked slower, they looked older, and I think the problem is Altidore and Bradley's aren't the same players. I think Bradley's just finished. He looked completely overmatched against New York City FC. He was just outmuscled. The quickness, he wasn't reading the game the same way. Because Bradley, when he first came, was brilliant at reading the game, just calming it down. But he just, over the last 2 years, he hasn't done that. And despite them making the finals last year, I think that's a lot to do with Greg Vanney and more Giovinco and Altidore. Because I think this was kind of the first year where I said Altidore was really an issue. It wasn't even last year. It was kind of this year. And towards the end, his injuries just have kind of slowed him down.
I definitely agree with you. I do think that this GFC squad is aging. There are obviously some bright spots. You can never disregard it. I do think Osorio still plays a decent game. I still think Akinola for
definitely.
sure.
They have very good. Even Richie Larea. They do have good players, but I think they didn't have enough good players, and they didn't have enough team togetherness. And even if they would have beaten New York City FC, I don't think they would have beaten anyone from the West, because teams like Sporting Kansas City, LAFC. They just look so much better, and if you watch them all play football, they play a lot more fluid and they play a lot more as a team. And TFC just seemed a little disconnected, even when they played well against Montreal. They just seemed disconnected as a group.
I do think, for sure. I do think Greg Vanney will look at this result and will say, okay, what can we do now to change things? I do think that's something with the board they definitely have to have a conversation about. okay, Bradley was not going to sign this up the season, and there was thoughts about Altidore. So there are those question marks that I think TFC and the general board need to figure out, especially coming in the off season in the winter. But I guess for now we have to watch and see how it kind of pans out. We obviously, with the summer transfer window, I don't know if it applies. I believe it applies in America, right? I don't know if they have the same
I'm not
thing.
sure exactly how it works. Again, the season's kind of all messed up. But,
Yeah, it's so weird.
we'll figure out. I'm pretty sure teams could get in players whenever they want.
Yeah.
And TFC will do their business when they see fit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We've covered just about everything. It's been our first time back in a few months because of COVID-19, but we are happy to be back. Sports is coming back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Also, we'll be on YouTube now. We will not be on Spirit Live, so please check out our channel and subscribe.
YouTube and Spotify, we're going to start uploading over there. If you guys like it, show a friend, show whoever you want. The more the better. We'll keep doing it. We'll be back, I think, after game 2 for the Leafs. We're going to review, the first few games, and we'll see how that plans out. But until then, we hope you guys enjoy and see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening.